All right, welcome. We're going to do something a little bit different today, involving me singing jazz. Ain't nobody else to play the bass quite like my man PC. Ain't another guy who keeps the beat quite like my man PC. The bit when he's on set, he don't fret, and that's alright with me. Yeah, So, there's a variation for ya. Oh, T-Baby's in the house. Sorry, sometimes I gotta shout out to some of my favorite people when they're watching live. So, welcome to episode 3 of the Short and Sweet podcast. I'm your host, David Shorten, and today we're just gonna do one topic because I seem to fail quite spectacularly at trying to get to 2 topics in one podcast. And there will be some more music at the end of things this time. So, double feature. I'm wearing flags. You can't see very well, but I'm wearing flags. And I'm going to tell you why I'm wearing flags. I had the best night last night because I went to this event. It's called Mundo Lingo. And they're apparently all over the place. I don't know if it's just North America. I would encourage you to check it out. Just Google it, Mundo Lingo. And it's for people who want to improve their language skills. So if you're learning, the way it works is you wear the flags of countries that represent the languages that you speak on the top. So I'm Canadian, so I have my Canadian flag, which means I speak English. And I have a French flag because I speak French. Or at least, I'm comfortable enough in French that I can help other people practice their French, even though it's my second language. And then I wore the Spanish flag, and the Turkish flag, because those are the languages that I'm learning. So you wear those on the bottom because those are the ones you're not so good at. So then you go, it's held at a bar. Well, in Montreal, it's held at a bar. Probably different places hosted at different locations, but you go, and then you just talk to people who you don't know. You help them in whatever languages they're wanting to practice, and then they help you in languages that they're comfortable in and that you're trying to learn. So it was a freaking ball. I had so much fun. I was talking to these people. One was from Venezuela and one was from Spain. A little harder to find Turkish people. I met a guy at the end of the night who was Turkish, but I had to go. So I'm looking forward to the next time. Check it out, Mundolingo. I think they probably have an event near you. So that was fun. Our topic today is psychopathy, because I know that most of my listeners are psychopathic. So this will be very applicable to you all. I came across this guy recently. His name is James Fallon, and he is a neuroscientist. And he has an interesting story because he was studying brain scans of different people, and he had access to the brain scans of psychopaths. These were people who were in prison for crime, and they had brain scans because if they could prove that they had a mental issue, that would lighten their sentence. So this guy had all these brain scans from criminals, and he was in this particular instance, he was doing some research on Alzheimer's. So he had that sample group of psychopaths, and then he had a bunch of other samples, and he volunteered as one of the samples. So he had a brain scan done on himself, and then he noticed one day that there was a mix-up in the scans, and in the normal scans there was an obviously psychopathic brain scan, because he was at that point he was familiar enough with what a psychopathic brain looked like that he knew off the bat that not only was this a psychopath, but it was like one of the worst psychopaths. So he goes to verify, how did this get in the normal pile? And they're like, no, this isn't a psychopath. This is someone who had volunteered a normal person who had volunteered their brain scan. And so they had to check who it was, and it was him, the researcher. So he found out this day that he had the brain of a psychopath to an extreme, in an extreme way. So this, of course, is really interesting, and he's done some talks. He's done TED Talks. I would really recommend you looking him up because they're so interesting. He talks about the mind of dictators by looking at the brain scans of psychopaths. So you have the brain scans of psychopaths that have been caught in criminal acts, and then of course you have their tendencies. You can easily match the two because you have access both to the people and the scans. With dictators, you don't have their brain scans. Obviously, we don't have Hitler's brain scan. We don't have Hugo Chavez's brain scans. But we do have their behaviors. We can analyze the way they behave, or the way they have behaved, and you can compare between them, kind of like which one of them have psychopathic traits matched to people who we know for sure are psychopaths. So he's done a lot of that. But what I want to talk about is kind of a new tendency I've observed of labeling people psychopaths who commit terrible crimes like mass murder, and then either they get killed by police in the act, or they turn the gun on themselves after, which has been happening a lot these days in Europe, in the States, and in a lot of places. And I've just noticed that, like, every time this happens, people are like, oh, well, they were a psychopath. And it's just like, you can't do that. Because psychopathy is an actual, mental condition that needs to be diagnosed by someone who has a lot more expertise than you. So you can't just say about someone who's dead that they were a psychopath, because now that they're dead, you can't ask them questions. You can't ask them about their morality. You can't really. You can look at maybe some patterns that they've had by asking people they knew, but you certainly can't take a brain scan on them, right? So this made me a little suspicious of the motives of people who make that diagnosis themselves, who just say, oh, well, this person was a psychopath. So question number one for us all to think about is it reasonable to label anyone who commits murder, for instance, or some terrible crime? Is it reasonable to label that person a psychopath, considering that the process by which, psychiatrists and psychologists have to come to that conclusion is actually very complicated? There's certain tests. For instance, the Hare psychopathy checklist is one of them. And that's I think there's 40 questions on it that you kind of, yes or no, does this person exhibit these traits? And from that, you can kind of figure out, is this person maybe a psychopath? But even that, they have a disclaimer that's you can, anyone can get access to the test and do it, but that doesn't mean that you can make a diagnosis based on it. So even with a tool such as that, the Hare psychopathy checklist, you still need to be an educated and trained individual to be able to say this person's a psychopath. So I don't think it's reasonable that we do that. But it actually reminds me of something that happened recently. I was on the metro with a friend of mine, and there was a guy in the metro who was randomly hitting things, just flinging and having these, making sounds, and those, you see those people and you're let's just keep our distance. You don't really, it's easy to kind of assume that those people are mentally unstable. But those people might also have Tourette's. I remember watching a documentary about Tourette's and learning about Tourette's and how these people have these physical and vocal tics where some people just and they curse, and they're just they look insane, but actually mentally they're completely normal. It's like they don't have any learning disability or anything like that. It's just tics that they have. And if you were friends with one of them, you would find that they're just like anyone else, minus the fact that they randomly shout or randomly make certain movements. And so my friend in the metro saw someone who was doing things like that, and he whispers to me, "That guy's insane." And honestly, if I had never seen that documentary, I probably would have been yeah, he's insane. But because I had been kind of informed, I said to him, maybe, but also he might just have Tourette's, in which case he's a completely normal person that just has tics. And so I think it's that kind of thing that we do. We're just it's kind of easy to assume, we figure, well, who would commit such a terrible crime who wasn't a psychopath? And that's a bit of an uncomfortable question, right? Because the implication in the event that person isn't a psychopath, the implication is a normal person can commit terrible crimes. And I don't think we want to believe that, because that means that we can commit terrible crimes. You know, if I'm a normal person, and a normal person does terrible things like this, that means that I'm completely morally capable of doing a terrible thing myself. So I think that's the danger. And furthermore, let's suppose, for instance, that after someone did this and was killed, that you could prove definitively that they were a psychopath. Does that excuse their action? Should you not put that person in jail? Should you put them instead in a straitjacket? Maybe that'd be a better life to live. I tend to think that whether or not someone is a psychopath, they are still responsible for their actions. Which brings me back to this James Fallon guy, because he is a psychopath, like by definition. And after he saw his brain scan, everything started to make sense. He was like, I do like cruel practical jokes. You know, he's thinking like, I guess there's some things that I do that kind of are reminiscent of being a psychopath. So he's a perfect example of a psychopath that is functioning, highly functioning in society. So if he were to commit murder, should he not be responsible for that because he's a psychopath? Should we not put him in jail? His own research has concluded that people that have what's called the warrior gene, which largely contributes to psychopathic tendencies, those people, it's not just the gene. Nurture reacts with the gene. So you may be at a disadvantage because you have that gene, but the way you were brought up, very commonly, your life as a child, that would factor in a huge way to whether you would end up acting out in violent ways as a psychopath. So I think those are important questions to ask, and especially to recognize that we are capable of evil. There's actually a little bit of irony in trying to separate ourselves from psychopaths. You know, in saying, oh, well, I don't have to worry about ever doing anything wrong because I'm not a psychopath. Only psychopaths do these terrible things. But a fact is that one of the common traits of psychopaths is not being able to acknowledge that they are morally deficient. They always think that what they're doing is for the greater good. So by saying of ourselves that because we're not psychopaths, we could never do anything very bad, we are exhibiting an extremely psychopathic attitude. It's actually psychopathic to think of yourself that you're not capable of evil, you know, for any reason. So, is that seriously my outro music? I'm gonna forgive myself because that was a really interesting topic. Let's be real. T-Baby is saying, that is deep and thought-provoking. Well, thank you. And thank you for your support. I'm gonna let it play out. That means that we'll have an extra live music set in the next episode, which won't be next week because I'm gone visiting family. So 2 weeks from now, we'll have some more stuff ready for you. So, yep, follow me at dshortenmusic on Twitter. Follow me on Periscope so that you won't miss out. T-Baby, I love you. You're like, I'm so glad that you finally caught it while it was live. And I will catch you all next week. Have a good one. davidshorten.com. Check it out.